Welcome to Voyage Daily Tech, the most important news personalized for you every day, supported by Voyage.com.
After listening to today's news, you'll know. First, archivists race a digital dark age to save Stephen Hawking's floppy disks, showing recent history is more fragile than ancient scrolls. Today, we'll take a closer look at this battle against bit rot and its implications for preserving our entire digital civilization. Second, BlackRock leads a major investor shift from broad tech to specialized AI and blockchain ETFs, with some funds surging nearly 89%. We'll break down this high-stakes picks and shovels strategy and what it signals for the convergence of AI and blockchain ecosystems. Third, defense startup Govini hits $100 million in recurring revenue, disrupting the Pentagon's acquisitions with a software-as-a-service model. So we'll discuss why this software-first approach is a turning point for defense and what it means for using AI to secure national supply chains. Fourth, Microsoft's Windows 10 end of life could create 480 million kilograms of e-waste by making 240 million PCs obsolete. We'll examine how this creates a security-as-a-service market and why EU regulations are forcing a different free approach for consumers. Fifth, China launches a surprise antitrust probe into Qualcomm's completed Autotalks deal, targeting the future of connected car technology. We'll analyse why Beijing is using antitrust law as a retaliatory weapon and how it affects the global race for connected vehicle dominance. Believe it or not, archivists just got their hands on Stephen Hawking's personal floppy disks, and what they're finding is an absolute bombshell. Tucked away on these decaying plastic squares are not just letters and lectures, but also games, revealing a hidden side of the legendary physicist. But this discovery also brings up a really tough question. When you recover someone's personal computer, who decides what's historically significant versus what's just invasively personal? Think about it. Drafts, deleted files, private letters. It forces archivists to navigate a complex ethical minefield, balancing the public's right to know against a person's posthumous privacy. This discovery is part of a frantic race against time. At Cambridge University Library, a project called Future Nostalgia is battling to prevent a digital dark age. The term digital dark age, made famous by people like Vint Cerf, one of the fathers of the internet, describes the terrifying idea that future historians might know less about the 21st century than they do about ancient Rome. The central conflict is a shocking one. Our digital information from just 30 or 40 years ago is proving more fragile than ancient scrolls from 200 BC. And that fragility isn't just about the physical disk breaking. It's something called bit rot. Essentially, the data is stored as tiny magnetic particles, and over time, these particles can lose their charge, literally causing the ones and zeros of the data to fade away into nothing. The problem goes deeper than just degrading disks. An archivist calls the early era of personal computing a Wild West with no dominant system. And, the reason this is such a nightmare is that unlike the famous Betamax versus VHS format war where one winner eventually emerged, the early computer market was a chaotic free-for-all. In the 80s and 90s, companies like Amstrad, Amiga, and dozens of others deliberately created their own unique, incompatible disk formats. It was a business strategy designed to lock you into their ecosystem, and it's a strategy that has now become a historical nightmare. This means dozens of different obscure machines are needed to read the data. The hardware is so scarce that archivists are hunting for drives on eBay and literally building new connectors just to get them to work. This has created a whole retro hardware economy. It's not just hobbyists. There's a growing professional market for refurbishing these old machines, a market projected to be worth over $15 billion by 2030, driven by the desperate need of archivists and nostalgic collectors. In one case, a team had to delicately tease mold off the flimsy magnetic surface of a disk to save its contents. And even if they get a disk to spin, the software is another nightmare. Much of it is a complete mystery, like the diamond word processor used for the political files of Neil Kinnock, the former UK Labour Party leader. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Researchers are exploring using AI as a kind of digital Rosetta Stone. The idea is to train machine learning models to look at the raw binary data, the ones and zeros, and figure out the structure of the file all on its own. It's a way to automatically translate these dead languages of software, which is critical because the people who created these systems are retiring or have passed away, and their knowledge is vanishing with them. The stakes are immense. On Hawking's disks, they found lectures so huge he had to split them across multiple floppies. On Kinnock's, they found lost correspondence with constituents, not just the speeches they already had. Every disk is a potential time capsule. The lead archivist puts the urgency in stark terms. The magnetic material the data is written on is starting to degrade. This isn't a matter of if the data will be lost, but when it's a rescue mission to save our own recent history from being erased forever. But this whole rescue mission leaves us with a chilling thought. While these heroes are saving data from the 80s, we might be creating a much bigger digital dark age right now. Think about it. All of your data on Google Drive, on social media, in proprietary cloud formats. What happens when those companies fail or change their technology? Without a plan, our own digital lives could become even more inaccessible to the future than a 40-year-old floppy disk. While archivists are racing to save the past, investors are placing massive bets on the future. BlackRock just pulled back the curtain on one of the biggest trades of the year, and it's a direct challenge to the old guard of big tech. According to Jay Jacobs, the firm's head of US equity ETFs, investors are systematically leaving traditional, broad tech sector funds. The reason? They're hunting for something more specific, more targeted, and potentially more explosive. Actually, this isn't the first time we've seen this movie. The creation of these specialized thematic ETFs is a modern echo of past tech booms. Think back to the dot-com era, when mutual funds piled into any company with a .com in its name, or the clean energy ETFs of the 2010s. While these products offer a tempting way to bet on the future, they also carry a hidden risk. It's called concentration risk. By focusing so intensely on one hot sector, investors become incredibly vulnerable if that single sector hits a downturn. It's a high-stakes game. Their first target is artificial intelligence. Instead of just buying a basket of all tech, they're pouring into funds like BlackRock's BAI, the AI. Innovation and Tech Active, ETF. Now, that word active is key. An active ETF means a fund manager is handpicking stocks they believe will be the true AI winners, rather than just passively tracking an index. The hope is that their expertise will lead to bigger returns, but this creates a risk you need to know about. AI washing. That's where companies with only a flimsy connection to AI get included in the fund just to capitalize on the hype, potentially diluting the fund's value and misleading investors. This gives them concentrated exposure to the entire AI ecosystem, from chip giants like Nvidia and Broadcom to platform leaders like Meta and Microsoft. This is, of course, a classic picks and shovels strategy. During the gold rush, the people who got rich weren't always the ones digging for gold. It was the people selling the picks and shovels. In the AI gold rush, companies like Nvidia and Broadcom are selling the shovels, the powerful chips that AI runs on. But this analogy isn't perfect. Unlike a simple shovel, AI infrastructure is a complex, rapidly changing ecosystem. Betting everything on today's super shovel makers is a huge risk, because what happens if a totally new technology like optical computing comes along and makes the current shovels obsolete overnight? The leaders of today could be the relics of tomorrow. The result? That fund is up 36% since its inception last fall. If that was just the appetizer, the main course is just being served. The real story is where the most aggressive money is flowing. It's a full-on bet on blockchain. Jacobs calls it a play on a potentially very disruptive theme, and the numbers are staggering. BlackRock's own iShares Ethereum Trust ETF, a fund that tracks the price of Ether, has surged nearly 42% in just the past 12 weeks. And it doesn't stop there. Other funds in the space are seeing even more dramatic growth. The Amplify Transformational Data Sharing ETF, known as BLOK, invests directly in companies building the core infrastructure for blockchain. Experts believe this theme will fundamentally impact not just technology, but all of fintech and the crypto world. The market seems to agree. Over the last year, the BLOK fund has skyrocketed by nearly 89%. The shift is undeniable. Investors are no longer just betting on tech, they're betting on the specific technologies they believe will build the future. So why are we seeing AI and blockchain grouped together like this? Beyond the marketing hype, there's a powerful synergistic thesis here. AI needs massive, trustworthy data sets to learn from, and blockchain can provide a secure, unchangeable record of that data. Think of it as a way to prove where AI's information came from. On the flip side, I can make blockchain smarter and more efficient. We're seeing real projects at this intersection, like decentralized AI networks that aren't controlled by a single company, or using blockchain to manage secure medical records that I can then analyze for diagnostics. This isn't just about buzzwords. It's about two powerful technologies that could solve each other's biggest problems. Speaking of high-stakes tech investments, a defense startup just blew past $100 million in revenue with a growth rate over 100% year after year. We've been tracking the tens of billions in venture money flooding into defense, and this is what that wave looks like when it hits shore. That $100 million figure is what the tech world calls annual recurring revenue, or ARR, and it signifies a monumental shift. This is a software as a service or SaaS model. The Pentagon is essentially paying a subscription fee, which is a huge change from the old way of doing things, decades-long cost-plus contracts for hardware. This recurring revenue model means faster software updates and more agility, but it also raises new questions about whether the government could become locked into a single vendor. It's a whole new ballgame. The company is Govini, and it just secured a $150 million investment from Bain Capital to fuel its explosive expansion. This is fresh proof that the neo-prime model of challenging the old guard isn't just theoretical anymore, it's producing nine-figure software businesses inside the Pentagon. And while Europe has been pursuing sovereign AI within a strict ethical framework, today's focus is the US venture-driven approach translating into operational wins. But is this really a zero-sum game? While it's framed as a battle, some experts see the start of a new symbiotic ecosystem. The future might not be a total replacement of the old guard. Instead, we could see these new agile software firms becoming critical suppliers to the legacy giants, essentially becoming the brains that power the hardware of established players. After all, the legacy primes aren't standing still. Heavy lobbying and entrenched relationships suggest a hybrid future is more likely than a clean handoff. But that's not the whole picture. The real turning point is that Govini's CEO, Tara Murphy-Doherty, an alum of rival Palantir, says she wants to seize a vertical slice of the entire defense tech space. Now, while the script says rival, the truth is a bit more nuanced. Palantir is known for its massive, all-encompassing data platforms. What Govini is doing is different. It's carving out a highly specialized niche focused specifically on acquisition systems and supply chain logistics. So the thing is, this is a strategic move to solve a very specific, very painful problem for the Department of Defense that broader platforms might not be designed to address. Her company has already landed a US government contract worth over $900 million. The mission is to modernize the military supply chain with its flagship AI software, ARC, replacing a system that is still running on spreadsheets. And yes, you heard that right, spreadsheets. The reason this is still happening goes far beyond just technology. It's about culture. The Pentagon faces immense bureaucratic inertia and a deeply ingrained risk-averse culture that often resists change. In fact, a 2024 audit by the Pentagon's own Inspector General found that many elements of the DoD's digital modernization strategy weren't even specific or measurable. So startups like Govini aren't just selling software, they're fighting a cultural battle against the status quo. What really brought this to a head, though, are the global stakes. This is all happening amid heightened national security concerns. Doherty is sounding the alarm, stating that while the US leads in China is outpacing its shipbuilding capacity, a threat, she says, needs to be taken very seriously. This shipbuilding gap is a very tangible example of those divergent strategies, America's venture-led approach versus China's military civil fusion action. So, how does Govini's software actually pull this off? The ARC platform uses AI to ingest and analyze a massive variety of data, everything from bills of materials and customs data to corporate filings. By connecting these dots, it can map a supply chain from a finished product, like a missile, down to the specific mine a rare earth element came from. It can then flag single points of failure or risks from foreign ownership. A case study with a federal agency showed that using ARC reduced the time it took to create supply chain reports by 83% and increased the number of reports they could generate by 500%. This is how you move from spreadsheets to true data-driven security. From the complex software securing national supply chains, we now shift to the consumer side, where a different kind of hardware problem is brewing, one that could create a mountain of e-waste. Nearly half of all Windows computers on the planet are about to become a major security risk. That's a staggering number, potentially impacting over 600 million devices. On October 14, 2025, Microsoft is officially ending support for its Windows 10 operating system. After that date, the company will stop sending out free security updates, leaving millions of machines and their user data vulnerable to viruses and cyber attacks. One leading consumer group is already calling this a looming disaster for both consumers and the environment. To give you a sense of the sheer scale, research firm Canalys estimates that the Windows 10 cutoff could render about 240 million PCs obsolete. This could generate around 480 million kilograms of electronic waste. To help you visualize that, it's roughly the same weight as 320,000 cars. We could be looking at the single largest surge of computer e-waste in history. Microsoft is encouraging people to upgrade to Windows 11 for free, but there's a massive catch. Millions of older, perfectly functional computers are not compatible with the new system. The reason they can't upgrade isn't because they're slow, it's because of very specific hardware requirements. Windows 11 demands a security chip called a Trusted Platform Module, or TPM 2.0, and a feature called Secure Boot. Most computers made before 2018 just don't have this. Even if their processors and memory are perfectly fine, this forces users into a corner. If your machine is too old to upgrade, your choice is to either continue using it without protection or pay for a fix. Microsoft is offering a program called Extended Security Updates, but for commercial organizations, it comes at a cost of $61 per device. What this effectively does is introduce a whole new business model, security as a service. You're now paying for something that used to be included, and that $61 price, that's just for the first year. The cost is set to double each year for up to 3 years. When we place this strategy alongside a company like Apple, which has a track record of providing free security updates for much older devices, the contradiction becomes clear. As one advocate for the right to repair put it, people are tired of living in a world filled with short-lived devices we can't fix. The core conflict is that this move could force millions to discard working computers, creating a mountain of environmental waste and forcing unnecessary spending. He added, "We deserve tech that lasts." Now, it's important to know there is a third option that isn't being widely discussed. This moment could trigger a mass migration to alternative, lightweight operating systems like Google's Chrome OS Flex or user-friendly versions of Linux. These are specifically designed to run efficiently on older hardware, potentially giving millions of these so-called obsolete PCs a new lease on life. However, if you zoom out, you'll see another layer of strategy at play. To get some of these security extensions, Microsoft is also making it harder to use Windows without a Microsoft account, a move many users have resisted over privacy concerns. Interestingly enough, in Europe, it's a different situation. Microsoft is actually offering these security updates for free to consumers in the European Economic Area. Why the special treatment? It appears to be a proactive move to comply with tough EU regulations like the Digital Markets Act, which aims to prevent dominant tech companies from imposing unfair conditions on users. It's a clear example of how strong regulation in one region can have a ripple effect. So the clock is ticking. This isn't just a software update. It's a high-stakes standoff. And for businesses, the stakes are even higher. We're not just talking about viruses. Failing to move off Windows 10 could mean violating data protection laws like GDPR or HIPAA, failing compliance audits, and even invalidating their cybersecurity insurance policies. It leaves hundreds of millions of people with a stark choice: buy a new computer you may not need, pay for temporary safety, or risk it all on an unsupported and vulnerable machine. From one American tech giant's difficult decision to another's international headache, China just dropped a bombshell on Qualcomm, and its stock immediately dropped 3%. The target is the tech giant Qualcomm. Chinese regulators have launched an antitrust investigation into its acquisition of the Israeli chip firm Autotalks. This development extends Beijing's anti-monopoly scrutiny from data center AI, which we've discussed before, right into the connected car stack. The reason this specific deal is so explosive is that Autotalks is a leader in something called V2X, which stands for Vehicle to Everything Communication. This is the technology that allows cars to talk to each other, to traffic lights, to pedestrians, literally everything on the road. So when Qualcomm bought Autotalks, it wasn't just buying a small chip company, it was securing a critical piece of the entire connected vehicle ecosystem. And that is what has China so concerned. But here's the twist. That deal officially closed months ago, back in June. And yes, they can do that. China's State Administration for Market Regulation, or SAMR, has the legal power under its anti-monopoly law to investigate and potentially even unwind mergers after they've been completed. We've seen similar moves elsewhere, like when UK regulators forced Meta to sell off Giphy long after that deal was done. The precedent is there, and it makes this a very real threat to Qualcomm. This situation presents a fascinating duality. On one side, we see the US using tools like export controls for national security, while on the other, it exposes China using antitrust law as a retaliatory weapon. It's a direct response to US actions, creating a new front in this economic battle. This broader clash has already spilled into parallel investigations over who can access cutting-edge compute, not just who holds the hardware. And this isn't an isolated incident either. The move mirrors a similar action against another US tech giant, Nvidia, with the SAMR alleging it too, had violated anti-monopoly law in a past acquisition. Meanwhile, Beijing has reportedly been discouraging its local firms from buying Nvidia chips. We're seeing the US and Singaporean authorities probing access to Nvidia's top-end compute, while at the same time, China is applying pressure from a completely different angle. This is where the situation takes a more complex turn. The probe lands just as China tightens its grip on the global tech supply chain, restricting exports of rare earths. These are the critical materials needed for everything from automobiles and defense to the very semiconductors at the heart of this conflict. This all unfolds right before an anticipated meeting between the leaders of the US and China. This isn't just a regulatory action, it's a high-stakes power play. With Qualcomm's chips inside major Chinese brands like Xiaomi, and with new controls on essential materials, Beijing is demonstrating its leverage. Washington wants to slow China's progress while keeping US champions globally dominant, a balancing act that gets harder every time a marquee American chip firm is squeezed. And this creates a huge problem for China's own companies. The truth is, major Chinese phone makers like Xiaomi have been heavily reliant on Qualcomm's high-end Snapdragon chips for their flagship phones. While this pressure could force them to look elsewhere and accelerate the rise of competitors, that transition isn't easy or fast, putting these brands in a very tough spot. The core conflict is now crystal clear, a battle for control over the future of technology with American companies directly in the crosshairs.
That's it for today on Voyage Daily Tech. Follow, share, and stay tuned for daily updates coming your way tomorrow.